as I started to organize this event, my goal was that I make no presentations at all. In the end, it didn't work out. I have to do some presentations due to the fact that some of the presenters just canceled the meeting or the participation. So, but I think it should be a quite interesting story. So yeah, let me talk about the content of my presentation is about the SeaTable ecosystem and also interface strategy. The ecosystem, well, this was the first idea to give you a short overview of what kind of information or interfaces we provide to make SeaTable even more flexible, to connect it to other solutions. And at the moment I started to create this presentation, to create this overview, I just recognized that the way how to deal with an interface could be totally different. And I would like to share my point of view. I didn't develop by myself. It was basically created in the discussion with some users of SeaTable, the way how I see interfaces. And I think it will be quite interesting after the presentation to have a discussion about what do you see it differently, what my approach will be. So yeah, I'm quite keen about your meaning afterwards. So the presentation is split into two parts. First, I will want to give us an overview of the SeaTable ecosystem. I also want to give an outlook of what we are working on. And then, as I said, I will jump right into this interface strategy, I call it. And yeah, in the end, we should discuss about it. So, SeaTable ecosystem. I made it quite easy for myself. I just created some bullet points. In the last year, we put a lot of effort into the creation of good documentation. And documentation means, for myself, a good documentation for a user. So that means the user manual. We have right now more than 350 user articles, or user manual entries. You find them on the URL docs.seatable.io. The idea is that as soon as a user has a problem using SeaTable, he can just put into the web form, for example, views, and he gets all the proposed So he can just type his question and he receives all the user manual entries to answer his question. So we make it quite deeply, or we try to answer all the possible questions the user might have. Also, we were we reworked the developer manual and also the API documentation. I'm quite sure you will find all the information needed that a developer needs to create any kind of interface. But if you're not a developer, but if you're just the admin, and most of you are the admins of the system, you will need a good admin manual, and this is the outlook. We will push a lot of effort in the next month into the rework of the admin manual, and what I can also promise you is that the installation method will be reduced from about 10 steps to, in the end, 3 steps. You only have to download a Docker Compose file, you have to fill out an environment variable file, and then you just click Docker Compose up -d, and the system is up and running. And this is our final approach, that we want to make the installation much more easier, and also we want to provide additional components that interact with SeaTable. Well, we provide other Docker solutions, and this will be improved in the next month. So this is the kind of outlook. Well, other integrations we have. Integrations inside SeaTable is OnlyOffice, Collabora Online, C-File, and well, of course you can use external SMTP services to send emails. I think I don't have to go into much more details, it's totally clear. External authentication. This was part of SeaTable version 3 and also a little bit of version 4.0. Right now I think we have all the important authentication methods available that you can, no matter how big your company is, you can bring your users inside SeaTable. So if you're using XAML or if you're using LDAP, SeaTable is totally capable of doing this. Then this is something, we have plugins already. I think all of you know them, like the page design plugin, the gallery, or the timeline. We will try to add new plugins by the end of the year. Basically, there will be 2 ones. One, it will be a kind of process diagram where you can see the linkages or the links between the tables will be just visualized, that you get a faster understanding of how are rows or how are tables interconnected. And the second one will be a kind of org chart where you can just visualize any kind of organizational structure. So this will be developed by ourselves. Okay, and now it brings me to the point, how can you interconnect SeaTable with other solutions? Of course, there's a fully documented API. But we also develop apps for various integration platforms like Zaper, Make, and also N8N to make it possible to have a kind of trigger action process, like if something happens in another solution or if something happens in SeaTable, you have a kind of workflow that brings data from one system to another. And this is, from my point of view, the next step for the development of SeaTable, to connect really SeaTable with other solutions, to skip this borders between one solution and another, and to really to interconnect with them. And this brings me to the question about how, there should be interface strategy, sorry. This brings me to the topic interface strategy, because this is, I think, super important, how to interconnect different systems, how to make sure that all the data you want to have in SeaTable is in SeaTable. And typically I have the experience how interfaces are requested by somebody who wants to introduce SeaTable is like this. You have an existing ecosystem of various IT systems, and then SeaTable should be implemented, and you want to have all the different connections. So you need direct interfaces between all the different apps. So, the challenge is to develop all these different interfaces. And it's not that I'm just made this up. This is just from a tender from last month we participated. The tender document was only about 9 pages long, and it was about the introduction of a no-code platform in a public data center. And as I said, the document was only 9 pages long, but there was one page that really created some pain, or that created some trouble. Because as you can read over there, the tender was about implementing a low-code solution like SeaTable, and everything was just super easy for us to fulfill. Well, for storing the data, how to process the data, but this one page requires that we have to create interfaces to all these systems. So how do you calculate this? I don't even know what they mean with Datev. Well, I know Datev, but what kind of software solution from Datev? So how should we calculate the effort to create such an interface? Or take, I don't know, CZ-Kita. I'm quite sure this is a custom-built solution where I don't even know if they have an API. So what kind of value should I put into this tender? How should we develop such an interface with SeaTable if we don't even know the software solutions? So from my point of view, this is totally crazy to think about it in this way. You have these kind of software solutions, and then there comes a new software solution like SeaTable, and you need all these connections, all these interfaces. It's totally crazy because you don't have to develop them, you also have to, maintain them. So it's a huge effort. And here comes now the central change in mind. I think that's necessary. And the central idea should be, why do you want to create interfaces between all the different apps or the different solutions? Why not creating an interface to a central interface, to a central system, and then also put some logic into that? Because this will reduce the number of interfaces you have to develop for integrating new software to only one. If you have existing connections to the central interface, you only need, for new software, you only need one more interface. And, this brings me to the point, I think there is already a perfect solution to do this, and if you're planning probably to integrate SeaTable more deeply into your existing software application landscape, then I would recommend you to have a look at N8N. And these are the reasons why I think N8N is such a perfect solution or a perfect addition to SeaTable, because first of all, it has a self-hosted option. Just take, for example, our biggest customer or biggest potential customer in the German Armed Forces. There's no way that they will work with Zaper or Make or any other SaaS product. They will not give away their data. So they need a solution they can host by themselves. And N8N can provide this. Second one, N8N is completely working in the browser, so you don't need any kind of installation or something. You just open up the browser, log in, and you're ready to go. The source code is completely available. It's not open source, it's fair sourced. From my point of view, it's not a big difference because the source code is available. If you ask the founder of N8N, there's a big difference between fair code and open source, but this is another topic. Okay, and now it comes to the point, how difficult is it to build such an interface? And from my own experience, it's quite easy to build such an interface. as soon as you have an API inside the system you want to connect. Okay, most of you might not know or not even seen N8N. This is an example workflow how N8N might look like. Every box is just representing either an interface to a system or it represents a workflow step. In the workflow step, well, what does happen over here? This is an example for I want to make a survey. Everybody can participate in the survey, and I want to, well, give a present to 2 just randomly selected survey users. So you have a survey, you have 100 answers, and I just want to give a present to 2 of them. So first I create the first step is I make the survey with SeaTable. I have just the web form. Everybody puts the data in, so I have 100 records in SeaTable. So the first action is I get all the information, all the 100 rows from SeaTable. Then first step is I remove duplicates. Then I move through this loop to sort them, so to shuffle them. That I don't want to promote the first entry and I don't want to promote the second entry. I want to take just 2 out of them. So I just shuffle them 10 times. Then I remove unnecessary information in these 2 steps, and then in the end I just create it or to form it in the right way that I just can put it into a webhook. So that means to just execute this command, I just open up an URL and the URL presents me the result in terms of, well, there's a heading, these are the winners, and just shows me the 2 winners. So this is how a node looks like. So if I click just on this SeaTable node here, these are, for example, the commands I can just configure. So what should this node should do? It should interact with a row, it should get the rows, and now I can pre-select or I can select one of the tables, and I can immediately see the results that are coming from SeaTable, and that could be processed in the next steps by N8N. This, for example, is another node like the if node. So the if node is not about dealing with a software solution. This is just an internal step, for example, where I just have the run index. So this is about this loop here, or this loop. I just want to run it, 10 times. I want to run it 5 times. So the loop just runs 5 times. Every time the run index just increased by 1. So what I want to show here is that you can use JavaScript and variables inside the different steps. So you're completely free to design super heavy, super intelligent workflow processes. Exactly, and this is the result. I just call the URL, and every time I just call the URL, the complete workflow is just executed and just presents me 2 of the winners, or the 2 winners just selected out of the numbers of rows that I have inside SeaTable. And as you can see, for example, here the output is just formatted in HTML, so well, I can make it super easy. And this is just an example. So in the beginning, I told you that the node development is quite easy. And I don't want just to tell you this and hoping that you accept this. I want to prove it. And therefore, I just searched for public available APIs. And I found one beim Deutschen Bundestag. The Deutsche Bundestag is one of the few departments who provide a public available API. And it's possible to get some, you have a documentation in the internet, you can find it, and it just provides all the information the Deutsche Bundestag generates, like what kind of laws are just introduced, what kind of discussions are led in the German Bundestag. And I tried to use this public API and to create my own N8N node. And it took me about, 2 hours and about 300 lines of code to create my own Deutsche Bundestag N8N node, which is capable of just requesting a title, and I can also select what kind of document I'm looking for, then it delivers me the results. And as you can see on the right-hand side, this is the code I basically wrote. Every of these boxes over here describes what kind of interface or input values I can put in. So for example, the Wahlperiode is, for example, it's a number field, so it only accepts values between 1 and 25. The title, for example, it's a string, it has no default value, and it's not required, so it doesn't have to be filled out. And for example, the Vorgangstyp
well, it's predefined by the API. I just can use, for example, Gesetzgebung, Rechtsverordnung, and all the other terms. I just got this information from the API documentation. And in the end, the API call is over there. So the first 10, is it big enough? Can we read it, or is it? Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I want that you can follow it, otherwise it would be just nuts. So this is, yeah. So this is basically the code, the JavaScript code I wrote to execute in the end the command in direction of the API. First, I get all the information from the input side. So I just store the information from the field aktualisiert to my variable aktualisiert. Then I check if all the values are empty or filled, because they have to be filled. Otherwise, TypeScript will just throw an error. But the concrete API call is defined just in 10 lines of code. So I have a GET request, I use my parameters, and this is the concrete URL of the API. And in the end, I make a request which is already authenticated, so I need to provide an API key. And this is basically 300 lines of code to create my own N8N node to an existing API. Now it's more clear? It was big enough? Exactly. So this is how it would look like in the end. If I use this N8N node, for example, I create a webhook for starting this process. For sure, I can just start it manually, but users should not interact directly with the N8N interface if it's not necessary. So I just create a kind of webhook. The webhook requests for a search term. I can also pass all the other variables, and it just added the SeaTable N8N node to put all the answers into a SeaTable base. So every time I just execute this with a search term, all the results that are provided by the Deutschen Bundestag are just put into this base table, the SeaTable base. So I know we are no lawyers, this might not be interesting for us, but I want to show this to explain how I think about interfaces. Or just take the city of Mainz. They have the same requirements for interfaces like the city of Stuttgart, like the city of Hamburg. They all request or require the same interfaces. And now think about, well, you have N8N as a central hub, and all these interfaces have only to develop once. As soon as you have an API, it's such an easy task to create an interface landscape. And this is also another super great advantage of N8N. You can create nodes. Either they could be public, so they're available to everybody. They could be private. So that means you develop them by yourself and just use it in your own self-hosted N8N. Or they could be a community-driven, so that means you can use it, but you don't have to use it. It's just published via Node. Okay, and this brings me to the point. There is already an N8N node for SeaTable. This is looking like this today, so we only have about 5 actions and 1 triggers. Triggers is always starting, the starting side of a process, and action is that could be done with the data. And we are currently in the rework phase of the N8N node. In the future, or in the next weeks, we will provide all these actions. So you have a lot of flexibility. Any kind of data you're just putting into this N8N node of SeaTable, you can just process it. Or you can trigger so many different things. You can either looking for new rows, you can look for even new signatures, because we have the signature column. Every time somebody just gives a signature, such a workflow could start. And well, for me, this is the central aspect of the interface strategy. Just think about the public sector. If everybody could agree that it doesn't make sense to create interfaces between every software solution, but instead using a centralized interface, it could reduce the number of interfaces a lot and also reduce the amount of effort you have to put in. And therefore, my proposal, if you have a lot of interfaces or if you want to interconnect SeaTable with many different solutions, I would recommend to you have a look at NNN. We will also add it to the admin manual in the next weeks as a complementary software to SeaTable, because I think it's such a great match. And well, this is my proposed interface strategy, and I'm quite keen about your questions and your meaning. Yeah.
How you share these information that you process of getting integrations with such tools with us, actually? So I didn't notice that the NHN integration is there. Will it be shared, or where do you share it?
You mean you want to know that we develop something like this? Or, well, on our webpage, SeaTable.io, we have a separate area where it's called integration, where we just mention that we have a node. It was mentioned now twice in the forum. Of course, we will do some YouTube videos about this. I don't know. What else do you expect, or what else do you hope?
Every vendor has a forum, every vendor has a web page. To be honest, there are too much forums, too much web pages. No way to monitor everything. Such integrations, even if SeaTable Limited creating their own workflow integration, is a key to get this solution into the market. So if you, from NHN part of view, there are several of these vendors where we can involve external tools into playbooks, automations, whatever. And this is an integration part what makes it very easy for existing customers to use a solution. And it's a really great invest to create these integrations. But then we have to get it to the market and share. So for me, I have to know that the integration is there to inform my customers that they can integrate with SeaTable
Yep.
without building on their own. It can be bringing money.
Okay, I see. Well, to be honest, N8N is quite a new topic for us. So we put a lot of effort in improving the current N8N node. It already exists since half a year, but it was not, well, feature complete, I would say. But right now we have some bigger customers like the German Armed Forces and also 2 capital cities, federal cities of federal states, I don't know, capitals. And they are requesting especially this functionality. They want to integrate SeaTable. They want to use SeaTable for digitalization of their processes, and they need interfaces to the different software solutions they already use. And they requested us to develop interfaces. And we were like, no, we cannot develop interfaces for every system you're just using. Like, what did they request? It was not Outlook, it was an older version of email. I don't know what. So they requested interfaces for solutions which are not state of the art. And we said, no, this is not the way how we recommend you to go forward. We would recommend to you think about a solution that is centralized, that is easy to maintain, that is not cost effective. And well, then we ended up with, we will promote them N8N, and we partnered with them, and we will intensify our collaboration with them, and I think it's just a perfect match. And therefore, you will receive more information about this in the next future, in the near future.
It's always thinking about it's not an information just only for SeaTable, and most of the companies are afraid if I notice that there's an integration in another vendor, I can lose market share. It was absolutely nonsense. There are examples for Node-RED or the DXL of Neutralix or whatever. There are bus systems, integration, playbook solutions that bring such big market solution or big market share that could be present. And it's not kicking out ideas like workflows in the system itself. But don't be isolated, be open, share, integrate. This is the stuff that can bring really forward.
Yep. Okay, this was about marketing. Any other questions? Okay, I might have blown you away. So if you have any questions about integration, especially with N8N, for example, just contact me. I'm quite keen or quite willing to show you anything. I think it's a very powerful solution. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. Then I would like to hand over to Omnicult.